Story 1. In my culture, the average height is around 5 feet, 5 inches, but I'm a full foot taller at 6 feet, 5 inches. Because of this, people often ask me to help reach items on high shelves at grocery stores. I don't mind helping as long as the items are light. 2 or 3 kilograms is manageable. Anything heavier tends to bring down a mini avalanche of dust, which no one wants. This story took place in 2022, shortly after my family moved into a new apartment near a massive wholesaler called Metro Cash and Carry. It's similar to Walmart, owned by a German company now acquired by Reliance, and caters to business owners. Most of the smaller stores in the area source their stock from this wholesaler, so it's a great place for us to shop in bulk. On this particular day, my wife and I split up to handle our shopping list faster. She was picking up oils, while I was gathering grains. I noticed a good deal on 1 kilogram packs of wheat that made them cheaper per kilo than the 5 kilogram packs. However, the 1 kilogram packs were almost out on the main shelf, so I reached up to the top shelf and pulled a few down. Just then, an elderly woman behind me politely asked if I could grab 5 packs for her as well. I didn't mind, so I passed them to her, and she thanked me before moving on. I started pushing my cart toward the legume section when I heard a loud, "Excuse me." I thought someone was calling for an employee, so I kept going. But then came an even louder, "Excuse me." I turned around, and there she was, a woman waving me down as if hailing a taxi. I pointed to myself, a bit confused. "Are you talking to me?" The woman replied sharply, "Yes, can you please help me?" Without moving closer, I asked, "With what?" She pointed at a 5 kilogram pack of rice on the top shelf and asked if I could bring it down for her. I glanced at the hefty pack and, as politely as I could, explained that it was a bit too heavy for me to grab safely. I suggested she ask an actual employee. There were 2 nearby to assist her. Then I turned back to continue with my shopping. Not 5 seconds later, I felt a tug on my arm. The woman was now physically pulling me back toward the rice shelf. She kept yanking my arm, insisting, "It's not that heavy. I'm in a hurry. Just get it for me." For a moment, I just stood there, completely shocked and honestly a little flustered. I may be tall, but I'm also non-confrontational and tend to avoid scenes. So, instead of arguing, I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled out my phone and called my wife. My wife and I balance each other out perfectly. She's petite, much shorter than the average height, and she's also very assertive when the situation calls for it. As soon as I said, "Hey, honey, could you come over here? A lady's giving me a hard time," she was on her way. Within moments, my wife appeared, storming over with the intensity of a one-woman army. She glared at the woman, who was still gripping my arm, and said, loud enough for half the store to hear, "Why are you touching my husband? He doesn't work here, and he's certainly not your personal assistant." The woman, caught off guard, stammered a few words, dropped my arm, and took a step back. My wife, still not fully briefed on the situation, asked, "So what exactly do you want from my husband?" The woman, clearly flustered, mumbled something about just needing some help getting the rice down. My wife raised her eyebrows, looked around, spotted an employee nearby, and said, "If you need help with rice, that's what these folks are here for. My husband doesn't work here." Then she made eye contact with one of the actual employees and gestured toward the rice, saying, "This lady needs help with the rice up there. Mind assisting her?" Without another word, the employee came over, and the woman slunk away toward the rice with him, still muttering under her breath. We still shop there, but we don't split up anymore. Story 2. I have shared a few stories here, but this may be the dumbest with nearly the biggest consequences. This all started because I was bored earlier this week. I was in a cross-sectional meeting about an important but highly complex subject that involved people from the government, local authorities, health, and the charity sector. As is so often the case in a meeting like this, lots of rabbit holes were delved down and very little was being achieved. It was also being held at the government's main building, so it is either freezing, or in this case, as they had put the heating on, boiling so it was hard to concentrate. A hiatus was called, and I took this as an excuse to go and check if I had enough time on my parking, which really means I'm going to nip off site to have a cigarette. An aside, I have given up 3 times this year. It's clearly going really well. So I dutifully did go and check my car, wandered back across the street, and lit up. This was probably an error, as a young angry man Yam came marching towards me. Yam, what's your problem? I was only here for a minute. I was only dropping something off. What you going to do about it? Op, I didn't do nothing to nobody. Yam, I want you to get on your damn machine and cancel it right now. Op, I didn't do nothing to nobody. Now, I have to say I probably wasn't helping the situation. I didn't respond with the normal reaction, surprise as I had seen him coming. I also didn't respond with a sensible reaction de-escalation. No, in my wisdom I had decided to go with reaction C*, amuse myself*. I did mention I was bored, and, as it happens, I have had a rather difficult couple of weeks. My response to this pressure is to be silly. I can also neither confirm nor deny that I may have just finished rereading Terry Pratchett's rather wonderful Men-at-Arms novel, and the idea of responding like the character Coalface was just too tempting not to do. Young angry man was not impressed, as his finger was now wagging rather too close to my nose for comfort. Yam, where do you get off? You think you have this power? Well, I'm going to show you. I slipped off the wall I was leaning on and repeatedly lowered my hands to get his attention. Op. Mate, I'm clearly not a parking guy. Look at me. Aside, traffic wardens in this local area tend to wear a hat with the local authority name and traffic warden on them. Also with a vest that repeats the same information, and, probably most importantly, they have a ticket machine somewhere on their person. I, on the other hand, was in a fairly nice charcoal suit with a lilac shirt and definitely didn't have the said ticket machine on my person. Yam, yeah you are. I saw you checking out that car across the street. Which was true. He had. It was just my car. Op. Bud, that's my car. I was checking the ticket. Yam, no, you have to sort this out now. Op, I can't. I'm sorry, I have to go to my meeting. Which, while flicking away the end of my cigarette, I did. I rather more briskly walked the 20 steps towards the entrance and flashed my visitor card at the guards who waved me by. Just as I started to think that was quite funny. Guard, get down on the ground now. There was a scurry of boots as I turned. The young angry man was now about 10 feet within the parameter of the site with 2 rifles aimed directly at his head. He slowly got to his knees and instinctively threw his hands behind his head. I hadn't noticed, or perhaps chosen not to notice, that the young angry man had decided to follow me, presumably to continue to contest his situation that I couldn't fix. I stared at the situation, but then got the head nod from the guard, so I turned heel and went back to my meeting. An hour or so of an unproductive, stifling meeting later, I had a rather embarrassed admin aide waiting for me. She asked extremely politely if I would mind following her as I was led into the depths of this governmental building. As we turned the final corner, I realized why I was there. The young angry man was now the young terrified man in a holding area marshaled by more armed guards. I was immediately met by the chief of security, who I happened to know quite well. Koss. Op, sorry to bother you, but this young man claims you gave him a parking ticket, and that is why he was following you in here. Op. Sort of. He seems to think I can give parking tickets. Koss. Are you serious? Op. Apparently I give up traffic warden vibes. Koss. So he is telling the truth. Op. Within reason. Koss. Okay, we'll process him. Then we shared some niceties about family, people we know, etc., and I headed off to the next thing to do that day. On this rare occasion, I can actually tell you the fate of the young man. He was let go with a severe warning not to trespass on government property again, escorted to his vehicle, and strongly suggested they would rather not see him ever again. So he didn't have anything worse happen to him than lose a few hours, still have a parking ticket, and, I shall quote this, probably need a change of underwear. Still, had he got much further, it could have been far worse, so maybe he'll learn to be a bit more observant. I certainly know I will. Story 3. I posted this as a reply to someone else's mailbox story. I was informed that it should be its own post, so here it is, edited slightly for clarity. This didn't start out as a quest for vengeance. We just wanted mail delivery to our house. Vengeance came as a byproduct, but it was truly delightful nonetheless. So, mailbox story time. This happened back in 1982, for the record. My folks moved to a very rural area on a gravel road. No one had previously lived here, so it was a battle just getting mail delivery in the first place. My folks went several rounds with the local postmaster. He was somewhat enamored with his own power and very much a rules-to-the-letter kind of guy. Every I must be dotted, every T crossed, and if there's so much as a semicolon out of place, you'll have to start all over again. He seemed to have made it his personal mission to make getting mail delivery to a new address as difficult as humanly possible. Ultimately, my folks managed to fill out the paperwork to his satisfaction, and he begrudgingly allowed us to put up a box and receive mail delivery at our new home. Dad was extremely careful in the placement of our box and making absolutely certain it was the exact height, precise placement from the road, etc., to avoid annoying our local postmaster any more than we already had. There are, or at least were, very specific rules about rural mail boxes. Dad followed every single one. That first mailbox was perfect. The man who drove the road grader was as annoyed as the local postmaster, as he now had a new driveway to accommodate. We suspect that's why he had it out for our mailbox. After the road grader had demolished 3 of our mailboxes, Dad got pissed. Previously, he'd used the most basic design, just a post in the ground with a box on top. Now, he was motivated. Dad got a hold of a 9-foot-long section of metal pipe. It's 4 inches in diameter, outer measurement, and has 3/4-inch thick walls. I have no idea what this was originally intended for, but I know how Dad used it. He dug a hole 5.5 feet deep. He welded an upside-down tripod shape, think open umbrella, to the bottom of the pole and dropped it into the 6-foot-wide hole. Each welded-on leg was about 3 feet of some kind of rebar, and there were 5 such spokes. He then dropped some huge rocks on top of the tripod shape to hold it in place. The empty spaces around the huge rocks were filled in with gravel, and he dumped sand to fill in the air gaps. Then he filled the rest of the hold in with dirt and mounted the mailbox on top of the post. 3 days after Dad installed the new mailbox, we heard the road grader coming down the road. Our house is a 1/4 mile from the road, but we heard the loud clang from inside. We also heard the cursing and swearing from inside. No one went down to look until they heard the road grader drive away. When they did, the box itself was slightly dented on one side, but it was still firmly upright and functional. 3 weeks later, we received a bill from the township for a bent grader blade. It was accompanied by a letter informing us that we had caused damage to city property because our mailbox was installed incorrectly. It would need to be moved, and we were liable for a bill of a couple $1,000s worth of repairs. Here's where it becomes pro-revenge instead of petty. Recall the fact that the local postmaster was annoyed with us over our battle to get mail delivery. Mom had made a point of each time we reinstalled the mailbox, taking photographs down to the post office and having the local postmaster sign off approval of the height, placement, etc. She'd done the same with Dad's superpost and had documented, signed approval of the box dated the day before the road grader had bent his blade trying to demolish the box. She submitted copies of the invoice for the grader blade, and the letter stating that the damage was our fault because our mailbox was incorrectly placed, to the post office. She also submitted copies of the official post office approval of the box to the township. The jerk of a postmaster was also quite prideful and became furious that his authority was being called into question by some podunk township. As far as he was concerned, the township wasn't questioning my parents. They were stating that his judgment was wrong. I don't know what went down between the postmaster and the township, but we received a second letter from the post office, reiterating their approval of our mailbox. We also got a formal apology from the township and noticed that the road grader's contract had been terminated because he lied about damage to city property. It was worded with a tone that said, "Please don't sue us because a contracted employee damaged your property." For the record, that post Dad installed nearly 40 years ago is still standing. We've replaced the box on top many times. That post, however, has now wrecked 2 cars and a truck in addition to that long-ago road grader. Story 4. About 10 years ago, I worked in a freestanding emergency room. Our main hospital was in the city about 30 miles away. We set up this emergency room in a shopping center in the suburbs so people with minor issues wouldn't have to drive all the way into town. Most everything we got was pretty minor. A few broken bones, fever and chills, older folks that have fallen, etc. We weren't set up for trauma, since we didn't have an or IQ, etc. So anytime an ambulance had a serious problem like that, they would bypass us and just drive straight to the hospital. But one time a teenager was mudding with his buddies, driving 4-wheelers in muddy fields, when his vehicle flipped. He completely degloved his arm from elbow to fingers. The skin peeled off his arm all the way down and was barely hanging on at his fingertips. Because they were all dumb teenagers, they decided to drive this kid to the emergency room rather than call an ambulance. I kid you not. This poor kid walked into our emergency room in a complete daze with all his skin in a grocery sack. We immediately went all hands on deck. Everyone was working to get this kid stable enough to be transported. We're working on blood transfusions, x-rays, pain meds, etc. The way the emergency room was set up, all the rooms were centered around a central nurse's station. So if every patient in each room saw this kid come back with his skinless arm, and all of us running around like crazy trying to save him. The x-ray tech was literally holding the poor guy down because he started to panic, and we had to get pain meds, etc. in him to calm him down. So they asked me to run to radiology and grab the portable x-ray machine so we could get x-rays to go with this kid when the helicopter comes and takes him to a hospital with a trauma center. So I race down the hall when this 40-something Karen steps out of her room and grabs my arm. "Excuse me, I've been waiting for over half an hour. When is the doctor going to see me?" "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have a serious emergency right now." I pointed behind me at all the buzz and craziness literally right behind us. "I was here before him, and I cannot wait all day." "Ma'am, this is an emergency room. We don't see patients on the first-come, first-served basis. We see those sickest first. The longer you wait is actually a good thing because that means there is someone else much worse than you. So at least you're not as bad as them." "Nonsense. I have been here for over half an hour and my sinuses are killing me. Go get the doctor right now." "I'm not doing that, ma'am. The doctor is well aware of why you're here, and if he hasn't seen you yet, it is because he has already decided that you can wait." I then just ran off because I didn't have any more time for her drama. She eventually stormed off and left without seeing the doctor. Also, the kid was okay. We got him to a great hospital with an awesome surgeon that got him all put back together. He had limited mobility and touch sensation, but he was going to be able to pretty much live a normal life. Story 5. This happened a few years back. Our homeowners association has always been known to be sneaky and to flat out give false accusations on homeowners, especially in this day with security cameras, and we can pretty easily spot out who the investigators are. Most recently, a homeowner was told she was supposed to get approval before she started re-shingling her roof. The thing is, her roof hasn't been re-shingled in 10 years, and she had no plans to do it. Things like that. Call it just a mistake. Call it malicious. Well, a few years ago, we had our time to shine. It was a simple morning. I was still temporarily living with my father at the time. Well, one morning, we decided to go out to get groceries when we found that his pickup truck had been smashed into. Nothing was taken, it was just smashed into. In fact, I still have pictures from that day, just before the cops arrived. Cops arrive, they do some investigating, and find that a rock inside the truck was from a house down the street. Unfortunately, they couldn't get them to admit to the crime, nor could they prove it was even them. Understandable, criminals will grab things that they find, but it was suspicious. The rock, I should say, was a special kind of rock that no one else in the neighborhood had, some round polished type, very unique. After this incident, I installed a security camera on his house. Well, not 2 days later, we got an homeowners association violation for a vehicle I saw that needs to be removed. Just 2 days later. I'm confused how such a letter could have been written up so fast, but I started to suspect foul play. One day, we were home and had a knock at the door. The homeowners association actually called a code inspection officer. The week hadn't even been over yet, so the parts to fix the truck weren't delivered yet. We weren't paying expedited shipping for damages we didn't cause, and the truck was so old insurance would probably just total it. The truck is sentimental to him, so he wasn't going to get rid of it. It still ran great. Code inspection tells my father that vehicles which do not run need to be removed. They both stop talking and take a second, and both almost say at the same time, "Don't I know you?" Turns out, the code inspection officer went to the same church as my father, and knew each other. This isn't malicious compliance yet, we are only just beginning. The officer tells my father if he can show the truck starts, he's going to write it up as being in code. My father starts the truck just fine, as the engine isn't damaged. He tells him to go on with his day and to have a good one. At this point, we are furious because we are starting to suspect the homeowners association may have done this, as there's no way they could have possibly known so fast. Unfortunately, our turn of the street had no neighbors with security cameras until I installed one on our house, so it caught nothing specific to our incident. Down the street, these people supposedly broke into a car as well, but the camera on their house was unable to see anything. Here's where the fun begins. Fast forward a couple months after nothing happened, I decided to install a new dash cam in my car. I found a good one that uses very little power off the battery and can activate if there's any bumps to the car, even if the car is off. It just needs to be wired straight to the battery for this. It's a thinkware. A few days later, we got a violation notice for our mailbox being crooked. It wasn't crooked much, but I do remember it recently having an angle. Odd, I could just fix it. But my car was aiming straight at the mailbox. I'm thinking, no, this couldn't be possible. It only records if there's a bump. I took out the memory card, and apparently I either didn't configure it correctly, but it was recording the whole time. It never went into sleep mode. I watched as the investigator walked up to the mailbox and pushed it crooked, then wrote down on his tablet his findings and took a picture for records. I'm appalled at what I see. I have the proof I needed. Now, for the malicious compliance part, they wanted us to come to the board meeting and present what is going on at our address. We haven't told them yet that we had the pictures, but to summarize real fast how our homeowners association works. The board hires an outside company to do the grunt work. Let's call it Bentry Management. We go to the meeting and sit down. Bentry Management has the one in control of our account, and I swear to you, she looked like a Karen, so the name fits for her. As time goes by in the meeting, we get to discuss what is happening at our house. We present the timelines and tell them about the truck being smashed, and just 2 days later we get a letter. We ask what dates the investigator was out for that time. Karen refuses to answer it. She argues ignorantly that we should keep better care of our stuff, as if it was our fault. Then comes the mailbox incident. We tell her that we have reasons to believe that the investigator is the one that is causing damages to our property and is harassing us. Karen denies this and says that is impossible, and that she knows him personally. "Oh, is that so?" I ask. She says, "Yes, why?" I then pull out my laptop out of my book bag that I had been hiding, open it up to the video file already loaded, and show it to the entire board. "Enter Exhibit A," I said out loud, and played the video. Karen's face is bright red. She says that is not her investigator. I then also pulled out the letter about the mailbox, which was complete with a date. It matches the cooked on timestamp on the video. She still tries to claim it's not them. No, it's a coincidence. I'm sorry, but you have a vandal, and it's not us. It's not? I let the video play, knowing she's falling into a pit hard right now. As the man walks towards my car, you can plain as day see Bentry Management on his shirt. She's no longer red now, she's white as a ghost. The board looks over at her and asks what she has to say about this. Karen is silent, and has nothing except a few noises which I assume was her brain trying to comprehend what just happened. I then proceed to bring up a previous case, which I happened to remember before we left for the meeting, where we had a grass violation beside our house. Now this area they were claiming was actually not visible from the sidewalk, due to the house's shape. I asked point blank, "Has at any time your investigators walked on our property, illegally trespassing?" Knowing as per their rules, they aren't allowed to do that. Karen is visibly shaking now and mutters out, "No, of course not." With her head down, unable to maintain eye contact with me. She probably feels that I have more evidence, but unfortunately I didn't, so I ask again. She asks, "Why?" Our neighbors, who are lawyers, literally next door to us where the side of this wall was, stands up and says, "Actually, that's not true. I have witnessed one of your investigators go between our houses and poke around the trash bins." Bingo! I didn't even realize she had this information. I couldn't have asked for better timing. Karen at this point just starts arguing with our neighbors about no proof. The board proceeded to apologize for the incident, and they were going to discuss what is going to happen in the future about this. At that point, the meeting is over. A month passes, and we get a letter that a new person will be in charge of Bentry Management, and new investigators. She was fired that night. Since she was fired, my father tells me we only get the occasional blip of errors, but they correct it immediately and don't bother us really anymore. Story 6. August 24th, 2017. So, in the previous version of my life, I was married and in a terrible relationship. I was married and was with her for 6 years, and 5 of those were extremely physically and emotionally abusive for me. 3 stab wounds, and a wonderful diagnosis of general anxiety disorder. I was extremely unhealthy and underweight, 140 pounds at 6 ft tall due to the fact she was an alcoholic, and all the money went towards bar tabs. Eventually she told me she wanted a divorce, and I couldn't change that. This sucked at first, but I realized slowly how abusive she was, and that I wouldn't have to deal with this anymore. I finally left 2 days after she came home drunk and beat me extremely badly, and I asked for the keys to our car since the car was in my name, and I was going to leave. She told me she didn't know where the car was, and she wouldn't give me the keys to the car. I then called the cops to report the car stolen, and they said since she was listed on the vehicle, I couldn't report it stolen. She essentially legally stole the car from me, even though the plates and everything were in my name. So, I did the only thing I could do and canceled the insurance, and didn't renew the tags a month later when I needed to. I documented why I was doing this, which was the only way I could go about keeping her from using the car. She would be forced to register the car in her name at that point to get the plate's registration to be active. She never did this, and 4 months after I canceled everything she got into a car wreck and totaled the car and did $36K worth of damage to the guy's car. Since she didn't have insurance, she and I were held responsible to pay. Because I was listed as an owner, I was held liable. This all happened in 2013-14. I found out in October 2016 that we were being sued by the car insurance company for $36K. She also informed me at the time that she was pregnant with the guy she left me for. She wrote in her response to the lawyer's lawsuit that we were separated, and she was 6 months pregnant without a job and her family was helping her with bills, completely irrelevant. She did this to try to make it out like I left her while she was pregnant and she could afford this, so I should have to. During all of this, we hired a lawyer for our divorce. What happened was she said she was getting a free consultation from the lawyer, so when I showed up she told him I was paying for everything since she didn't have a job and couldn't afford anything. I asked if she could commit to paying me back half, even if it takes her a year or longer. I was willing to wait till she got on her feet and had a job for her to pay me back, and every time she said no, I can't afford it. I wanted this to freaking end, so I paid for him, and he informed me that since this is the case, he is only representing me and she is without a lawyer now. So, when I get served with the lawsuit, the lawyer agrees to help with this as well and drafts an official legal response to the accusations denying them outright. We said she stole the car from me. I attempted to report it stolen, but the cops wouldn't do anything, and that 4 months after I canceled everything and informed her of this, she wrecked the car, so we were not at fault. They then sent her a new questionnaire to respond to with 13 accusations against her that she had 3 weeks to reply to. She never did. So, 3 months ago, they filed for motion of summary judgment. Basically, since she didn't respond, that was the equivalent of her admitting everything they accused her of. My lawyer then filed something. I'm not a lawyer, so I have no idea what he filed, to dismiss me from the case since I filed and responded in a timely manner and provided everything they asked. It was my ex that never responded, and since that's the case, she should be held responsible. Today, I got a letter from the lawyer of the car insurance company that they were dropping only me from the lawsuit, and I was off the hook. My ex has a hearing on September 13th where they are going to rule against her, and she will be held responsible for all $36K. Since my lawyer receives all documents that are filed as e-files, he gets them immediately. They must send her letter to her, so she doesn't even freaking know about this yet. September 21st, 2017. So I was wrong on my original date of when the hearing was going to happen. I said it was the 13th, but it was actually the 19th. My bad, guys. So after I received the call from my lawyer on August 24th, I received a call from my ex-wife. Let's call her Karen the next day on Friday. Karen immediately began yelling at me incoherently about what a piece of crap I was, how she couldn't believe how jerk I was, etc., etc. After her initial rant, I answered back, "Hi, Karen, how is your day going?" This triggered the second rant for how I need to grow up and how childish I was, yada yada. I asked her, "What's wrong, Karen? Sounds like something bad has happened." She then tells me that the douchebag's, baby's daddy, mom had found the letter and had now kicked her out of the house. Small backstory. Karen cheated on me with douchebag, left me for him, got knocked up, lost her job, and now lives with his parents and is financially supported 100% by his parents. She has also up to that day called her mother-in-law. She also told me that she was having to stay with her mom now and she lost her kid because of me. Apparently the ex-mother-in-law kicked her out, told her that the douchebag was keeping the kid and she was no longer welcome to be at their house. I ended the phone call by saying, "Doesn't it suck that an independent judge and a team of attorneys heard both sides of our story and knew how much of a piece of crap you are and sided with me? There's no manager you can call to whine at. You just have to live with this knowledge for the rest of your life. Have a nice life, you trashy witch. I hope you get screwed over hard by them." Click. I blocked her number and thought that was that. But no, I got a call on Monday from the douchebag. I've had the same phone number for 10 years now, and he had it from when me and Karen were married. He was her high school friend, asking in a panic if I had heard from Karen. I told him I talked to her on Friday after his mom kicked her out, and she called to rant at me, but I blocked her after and haven't heard from her. He then tells me that he can't get a hold of her, and she had come and kidnapped their baby, and he had no idea where she was, and as a last-ditch effort, decided to call me in hopes I might know something. I told him that she had said she was staying with her mom now, and he said they had been in no contact with her the entire time they were together, so he had no idea where she was. Plus, she didn't have a job right now, so he had no clue where she might be living. Immediately, I knew exactly where she was. I asked him if he knew where her grandmother lived. If her mom lost her job, nobody was going to roommate with her except her mom. He has never met the grandmother. Also no contact because she is a huge witch as well. I got crazy stories of that witch, but he also didn't know where she was. I told him I know exactly where she lives, and if he gives me a second I can Google map her address. I don't remember it exactly. After a minute of searching, I have the address. I let him know what it is, and tell him to give me a call if she's not there, and we can brainstorm where else she could be. Dude is truly a douchebag, but even douchebags need help. I'm not going to screw a child over my hate for its parents. About 2 hours later, he calls me back and tells me the cops rolled up to the grandmother's apartment, and Karen was freaking feeding the baby on the balcony. She got arrested, and the douchebag and his parents went and picked up his son, and now have him back in their possession. I told the douchebag I was happy everything worked out, but I didn't want to ever hear from him again. He said he understood, and I haven't heard from him since. Karen is now in jail, along with her mom for driving her to kidnap the child. Her mom actually admitted this to the police while defending Karen's actions, saying it was wrong to take her child from her, and she was doing what was right. Freaking idiot. So on the 19th, my lawyer attended the hearing, just to make sure nothing happened to me. Karen did not show since she is in jail. She got to call in from jail on the phone. They ruled against her 100%. She now has to pay $36,000 on her own. Her and her mom have no jobs except being Scentsy saleswomen, and she's in jail for God knows how long.